Welcome, I'm Dr. Emily Helder. I'm here with my research assistants, Ava and Francie, and we're continuing to talk about how the Stauffer case of adoption dissolution relates to the adoption research literature. And in this episode, we'll be talking about sharenting, a practice of sharing about your kids and parenting on social media, how that relates to the Stauffer case, how that might be unique, especially within the context of adoption. So why don't we give everybody some context about sort of the issues at play or the things at play for Huxley in particular.
So the Stauffers had a family YouTube channel that featured different daily vlogs or mealtime activities with their children even before they adopted Huxley. And so the mother, Micah, had been in the practice of sharing a lot of information about her children online for years. One child was on camera as he came out of the womb. So he has been, there his whole entire life. So she was pretty comfortable with that. And when they adopted Huxley, they highly publicized this adoption even before they had a child in mind. And before they had legally adopted him, his face was all over their YouTube channel. And so she just was very open about sharing this, but it also presents some challenges just in general for children, but particularly a child who's being adopted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let's talk more about that, and especially about sort of celebrity adoption. I know one of you had something you wanted to bring up with that.
Yeah, so Bystrom has some research regarding humanitarian adoption, where he analyzes celebrity adoptions in particular. And he explains how these are viewed as a sort of Cinderella narrative, where the adoptive parents rescue a child from a financially and mentally depleted existence. And his article explains that within the world of celebrities, it's oftentimes the power and the material wealth that encourages them to adopt in humanitarian efforts. And we definitely saw some of this with celebrities like Angelina Jolie, for example. And is adoption sort of used as a trend? And what are the consequences of using something like this as a trend?
Yeah, I guess my big concern would be that it would encourage people to pursue adoption, but maybe with problematic motivations or inaccurate expectations about what adoption really is and what it will be like. So if we say this, or if we have this message of adoption as rescue or the Cinderella narrative, again, like we said in the last video, that doesn't really acknowledge the nuances and complexities of adoption, and it doesn't really take into account the adoptee's perspective and in that. So that that narrative, I think, is problematic, and we really want to be recruiting families who are motivated to promote, who really want a child and want to be that family that's a good fit for that child, and to really promote the healthy development of that child. So really, we want the motivation to be there. And so when we have narratives that are other than that, that's where I think it gets problematic. Mm-hmm.
As we become technologically more advanced, social media is particularly gaining a lot of traction and a lot of power. So are there issues, and if so, what are there, with frequently and openly sharing pictures, videos, and information about a child on social media? And is there any long-term effects that this might have on a child?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So because the practice is fairly new, if you think about how long social media has been around or how long parent blogging has been around, there's not a lot of research on the long-term impacts that has for the kids who are being shared about. There are a couple studies looking at interviewing kids whose parents are currently sharing information about them, either just on social media or on blogs. And generally, the kids are not super into it. So the survey research is that the kids generally don't want to have their picture taken without their permission, for example, that's pretty frowned upon from the kids' perspective. They don't want to have things shared about them online without their permission. So, the majority feel uncomfortable with that. There was one study that looked at it from age 4 through teen, and actually the younger kids had more opposition to the practice than teens. Maybe it's a perspective taking thing that the teens sort of see more of why the parents are doing it. But yeah, so generally kids are not as comfortable with it, I think, as what parents are comfortable in sharing. And I think, you know, we'll see how this bears out over time as kids get older. Like, you know, things on the internet are there forever. And so we'll see as those kids age into college and are getting jobs and, you know, are at a point where they're maybe wanting to develop their own online identity, like what that starts to look like. I think specifically to adoption, though, this raises some other really important issues in that, you know, the adoption story, the circumstances of the child's separation from their birth family, for example, or any abuse or neglect that they experienced prior to their adoption, all of that is deeply personal information and really belongs to the adoptee themselves. I guess that would be my perspective. To me, it really should be theirs to share those specific details and not shared on their behalf. So that's where you really start, I think, to get some challenges. I don't know. Do you both agree?
Yeah, I was going to say I agree too. I have a family friend that I was adopted with. My parents met at our orphanage, and the mom's sister wrote a book on her son's adoption and just like everything that he experienced and stuff like that. And I know that kind of like was frustrating for like the family and him, like as they got older, because it's just kind of taking away an experience that is so personal and so like private.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just think beyond sharenting in the context of adoption has some extra layers that you need to be mindful of, I think. Yeah, helpful. Well, good. So in our next video, our last one, join us. We'll be talking about what we see as the future implications and what this means for adoption dissolution in general.